Well, hey, everybody, welcome to today's podcast episode. We are so excited to be joined by our first returning guest, episode 43, with Vincent James. He is the president and CEO of Dare to Care. Vincent, we appreciate you joining myself as well as our CEO and executive director, Jennifer Clark.
Well, thank you, Tony, and thank you, Jennifer, for having me. I'm really excited to be able to be back. And it was a joy the last time I did it, so I'm looking forward to today's conversation.
Yeah, we're thrilled to have you, and I think with everything going on, it's been a busy season for you guys over at Dare to Care. But we have questions, of course, but I'm just curious your thoughts on just the community's response. For us at our food pantry, it's been incredible. So I'm sure, and we're just kind of a small piece of what you guys do. So I'm sure the community response as a whole has been incredible to see.
Yeah, the community response has been amazing. I mean, just the outpouring of support and love, for our neighbors and seeing people just stepping up saying, what can I do? Donating, monetarily, donating time, whatever you can think of, people are trying to think about how they can help our neighbors. And that really shows the love and the character of our community.
Dare to Care is an important partner 365 days of the year for us at St. Vincent de Paul. We've also been seeing that outpouring of support with our organization. So it's been incredible to see. I know that not that long ago, you all released a report showing that hunger had been increasing even before these cuts took effect. And we've seen that as well. Our food pantry, the numbers have been going up consistently all year, with a big spike in the summer and then another big spike we're anticipating. We don't have our numbers finalized this month. So what are you seeing across the community in terms of food insecurity and where people are even before these cuts fully take effect?
Yeah, even before the cuts had even taken effect, we'd seen a 48% increase in need. This is before any changes to any other federal systems, nutrition programs, etc. We've seen this over the past 2 years, a 48% increase. And now, that percentage has just gone through the roof. Just within the recent weeks, within the last 3 weeks, as people were anticipating November the 1st, the ending in terms of the funding for SNAP benefits due to the government shutdown, people started really running into their food pantries, and our partners were talking about they were starting to see lines the past 2 weeks that they've seen this consistently.
Yeah, we've had record numbers over here as well. So, it's so disheartening on some level to see that need out there. But on the flip side, it gives me so much hope to see people in the community stepping up and wanting to fill that gap. Let's talk a little bit about what Dare to Care does for our partners for our listeners who may not be familiar with you and what you do for organizations like St. Vincent de Paul across the community.
Yes, that's a great question. One of the things that Dare to Care does is that if you were to think about, if you've ever been to Costco's, we have a main distribution center that is about the size of Costco's, where you walk through the shelving and all the food. And we have over 400 partners that we work with throughout 13 counties, 5 in Southern Indiana and 8 in Kentucky, that distribute the food. Partners like St. Vincent de Paul, we could not do what we do without you all, because you all are critical to the process. You're, the frontward facing organizations that touch our neighbors every day. And so we supply the food, but you all do the work as it relates to connecting with the neighbors and getting the food, getting them access to that food. And so, again, I want to thank you guys for being such incredible partners, always willing to step up and, think about how you can help the whole system. And so that with partners like you and others who have that same heart and passion for the mission, it makes our work a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, well, we definitely appreciate partnering with you. We talked a little bit about the uptick we've seen in need and people coming out to the food pantries for food, even in the summer before these cuts took effect. So with the government shutdown now in full swing and those cuts to SNAP and being pretty much something we're going to have to deal with, at least for this month, even though they've been partially funded. Um, what are you seeing, and what does this mean for those who rely on those benefits, and what is that going to mean for our community?
It's going to be really a challenging time. And to kind of put it in perspective, the 13 counties that we serve, $26.9 million a month in terms of SNAP benefits goes into those 13 counties. Dare to Care's budget is half of that. So, there's no way for the entire year. The
Hmm.
annual budget is half of that, the monthly need for SNAP benefits. So when you think about the impact economically that's going to have, that's $26 million or $27 million that's not coming into the community to retailers. That's money that's not, more importantly, that's not entering into the hands of our neighbors who need that for food. We know that SNAP is, the number one equalizer to addressing food insecurity. For every dollar that's invested in Dare to Care, we can provide 2 meals, but for every SNAP dollar, it's 9 meals. And so
Wow.
you can begin to see the gap that we can't fill alone. It is going to take a multi-sector approach from our private, public sectors to being able, and nonprofit sectors to being able to, remotely address the gap that we see as it relates to SNAP benefits.
Is this putting a lot of pressure on it? Because it feels like it's putting a lot of pressure on food pantries. I don't know what your thoughts are on the role that food pantries play, but it seems like food pantries are supposed to be kind of that last line of defense, or to help kind of for families. At least that's what we see when we go over there and talk to folks that utilize our services. It's that it's kind of to help top it off at the end and make sure that they've got enough for themselves or for their families. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. I mean, food pantries are critical. And here's what happens a lot of times people don't understand, but when you study the buying habits in terms of individuals who are SNAP recipients, they typically buy a large percentage of them buy all their food the first 2 weeks of the month. They buy all their food for the entire month, and knowing that that card, is going to be, uh, you know, re-upped at the end of that month. Those funds are going to be put back on the card for the next month. So, with that anticipation, people have already spent all their SNAP benefits funding, and for the month of October. And so, typically that's why you see that run in the grocery store the first of the month. All the items are gone on that first couple of days, and then they have to retool themselves. That's because of the buying habits of folks in terms of how they literally buy for the month. And so when you're running out at the end of the month and you're in hopes of having food the next month and it's not there, you're in even a much deeper situation, deeper hole than you were even before.
A lot of us think about budgeting and we think about just a spreadsheet with numbers on it that represents our income coming in and our income going back out the door to bills. But I've had people ask me in this work, how do you budget when you don't have any money? Why do people need to have financial education and stuff? And I'm like, you know what? People do an amazing job budgeting the resources they have, and that includes food. It includes transportation. When you're living off of benefits and you're not making enough money, you have to budget your food. And that's how you do that. You shop at the beginning, and you get really smart at where your resources are and where you're going to go to get what you need. You also brought something up earlier, Vincent, about just the gap that we're trying to fill and how big it is if you take the federal government out of it. I've had several conversations with supporters and, people who say, well, we don't want you to be reliant on the federal government and on government money, and the government shouldn't be providing this much support to people. And my response is always that the system that you are saying we don't need is huge. And when you don't see it anymore, you're going to feel it. And there is no way for us to quickly step into that gap and fill that gap of government resources. So the community is scrambling right now to do the best that they can. But if some of these cuts become permanent, we are going to see that our services are needed permanently. And that means that, you may not be paying tax dollars, but I sure hope that you support your nonprofits. If you care about people not going hungry, I hope that you continue to support your nonprofits after all of this is over, because I don't think that this is the end of the challenges that we're going to see. So I don't know what you think about that and what we're going to see going forward, because the government will reopen, SNAP benefits will be turned back on, but I don't think we're out of the woods yet in terms of challenges at the federal level.
No, I think this is just a precursor to what's getting ready to happen. When you think about, some of the changes that are going to be taking effect um, later on, uh, these are things that we're talking about. The city this 2 months ago was informed that the funding that was used for Meals on Wheels that was going to become more stricter, and so that automatically eliminated a large block of participants in the Meals on Wheels program. And in terms of what the government was supporting. And so, what are you going to do with the 900 families that no longer qualify for the program and they don't have the resources to purchase the food themselves? We're not ready for it. There's something I think that I understand and I agree with. When you talk about waste, when you talk about opportunities for, continuous improvement, all of those things, I am hook, line, and sinker bought into that. But there's a way that you go about doing that, to your point, Jennifer, that it does not shock the system and shock individuals and hurt people intentionally or unintentionally. But what it does, it gives people an opportunity to know, hey, this is how I'm going to have to navigate this for the future. And so I think that, those are some of the things that we're seeing and understanding. And also, how do we continue to be a resilient community in light of what we're
Hmm.
seeing right now, if this is a precursor to what's going to happen?
Okay, so going back to Vincent, what you were saying, and just this conversation about the gap that the federal government fills and how large of a system that is, and it benefits a lot of communities across the country, right? It benefits farmers, it benefits people in urban areas who might otherwise go hungry, it benefits retailers. And so just pulling that money from the system is going to create shockwaves. And this is the beginning of something that we anticipate continuing as we continue to see cuts to these programs. I know that the amount of food that Dare to Care receives, because people may think about Dare to Care, and St. Vincent de Paul, we don't just help people who are getting benefits. We also receive money directly from the federal government and resources directly from the federal government. So I know that you've seen a 39% decrease in the last month related to the food that you see from the federal government. How are you coping with that, and how do you see that being a challenge going forward?
Yes, it's a big challenge for us. I mean, we are over, if you were to, the first 4 months of our fiscal year, we are right now 1 million pounds down from last year in
Wow.
comparison, at a time that we need to be 2 million pounds above, ahead of where we were last year because of the demand. We're 1 million pounds down. And so, we're going to continue to give out the food. The hurting thing for me is to talk to partners like St. Vincent de Paul, and you share it with me, you ran out of food. That hurts me to the core, because I know when you run out of food, that means other people don't have food. And, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're able to provide our community, our partners with food. But, again, that gap that we are seeing and experiencing because of the federal cuts to the program, we're 1,000 pounds, 1 million pounds down from federal commodities. That impacts the community. We need that 1 million pounds now, and we don't have it.
Hmm.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
fewer resources from the federal government, more need, and we're just looking at that continuing. A lot of people don't realize, I think, that food cost is not included in the rate of inflation. So I feel like food pantries and organizations like Dare to Care, we are kind of the canaries in the coal mine. You may think that inflation is holding steady, the Fed has dropped the interest rates, the stock market's looking good, but when you get to people who are living on the margins, I don't know that most of the community understands just how much harder their lives have been in the last couple of years and how much that rising food costs outside of what we report as the inflation numbers they've outpaced inflation. Food cost has outpaced
Yeah,
inflation. So we're really being hit on all sides, right? We're getting fewer resources from the federal government. We're seeing more need generally. Families aren't able to stretch their dollar, going back to that budgeting issue, as much
right,
as they used to be able to. And there's going to be real harm done to our community. So
right.
when you think about that and just that people don't necessarily see hunger and they don't see what we see, like how does that make you feel and what does that make you think about the future going forward?
That's one of the reasons why, Jennifer, I actually was just sharing with our director of communications. We have to bombard the airwaves to educate people on what's really happening. Because there's a misperception about a SNAP recipient. Who are they? Uh, they are what we call and identify the working poor. They go to work every day, but they just don't make enough money to be able to pay all of their bills. Even I know, we have partners that we've spoken with and neighbors that we've talked with that are working 2 and 3 jobs and don't have enough, still having to make those tough choices as do I buy groceries for my kids and family, for them to eat, or do I put gas in the car, but I can't do both. I need gas in the car because I got to get to work. If I don't get to work, then I don't get to have the money to be able to put gas or food on the table. So, what Dare to Care is a safety net. If you were to think about this, and the federal programs that were designed to really help families to navigate difficult times in terms of addressing food insecurity and other times, and anyone can become food insecure at any given time. You lose your job,
Mhm.
you're living paycheck to paycheck already. You're getting ready to become food insecure. And unfortunately, we see a lot of people that happens to. And then we see people who are working every day. They just don't. They're not making a living wage. They're not earning a living wage, and because of that, they're having to make tough choices. And so they need those supports, and they need Dare to Care to be able to navigate for food for their families. And so it's really creating real challenges for a lot of people that could have been done differently.
And would have really been so much worse if you hadn't had a Dare to Care in your community, if you didn't have a St. Vincent de Paul in their community. And I'm sure there are communities out there that are dealing with that right now. One of the things
Yeah,
that I love the most about St. Vincent de Paul is that we approach service from a place where we do not judge people. We believe in the dignity of every person who walks through our door. We try to treat people with respect. And it does challenge people sometimes. It challenges employees who come to work here. It challenges our supporters because you do want to say, oh, well, that person should make different choices. I saw a reel on Instagram at some point this week where somebody was saying, I don't care that SNAP benefits have been cut because I was in line behind someone who bought cupcakes for their kid on their SNAP benefits, and they shouldn't have done that. They should make better choices. And there's
mm,
just so much tied up in that about how separate we've all become in terms of how we talk to each other about things and who we feel like we know and how much we feel like we know about other people. Um,
right.
I mean, if you take a moment and really come to that from a place of empathy, can you imagine it being your kid's birthday? And of course, that mom's going to go hungry. Of course, that mom's not going to try and do what she can to get those cupcakes. And she's not going to care if she doesn't have dinner that night. She's going to go hungry so that her kid can have cupcakes. And I think there are a lot of people who've never had to make that choice, who, if they were put in that position, would make the same choice. And so, as much as we can, I just agree with you so much that the more we can do to educate people about who is really on the other end of these benefits and these challenges, the more people are going to understand that this is not about somebody else. This is not about other people who have these problems. This is not about, these are our neighbors and our friends and our family. And a lot of us are not that far away from being in that position.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Well, and to your point, Jennifer, we had Vincent G Appliances, their Blue Wave came out last month, and we completely knocked down that big wall that we had at the food pantry that,
Right.
symbolically now it's like it is such a more welcoming and accessible place for our volunteers and clients to connect, where there's not this proverbial us versus them. Like, no, we're in this
Right.
together. We've seen just Tuesday there was two women who just came for the first time. I don't know if they were impacted because of the SNAP benefits or coming because of that, but we have definitely seen an increase. Like Jennifer said, the foot traffic lately has been in the 140s, where historically we've served 80 to 90. And so it's been a big jump. And our food pantry, for those who don't know, is 100% volunteer run. And Vincent, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Jennifer and I have talked about this offline a little bit, but our volunteers, and they've had discussions on these changes, but essentially at the beginning of this year in January, a couple of changes were made to food pantries. And again, just would love to hear your thoughts on this. They removed address-based barriers, TFAP that is, so that's the Emergency Food Assistance Program, removed address-based barriers where historically we just served our 40203 zip code, those that live there. So now we can, serve any Kentucky resident. And then as well as that, another change was allowed households to visit food pantries as often as needed per month, whereas, again, before it was limiting USDA bag distributions to just twice per month. Around that same time in the summer, we started receiving several thousand pounds less per month from the USDA. So it's this double-edged sword of we're getting a lot more foot traffic because of a couple of these changes, but we're receiving less support from the government. I'm just curious your thoughts and how the heck you navigate those challenges at Dare to Care, because that's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, that it is tough, Tony, when I think about, you having less food coming in and you have demand that's continuing to increase, and so that automatically creates a gap of, services provided, because you have less to work with. Well, one of the things I know that we're doing at Dare to Care in terms of what I think everyone is going to have to figure out and do is that we have to raise that money some sort of way, to fill that gap. And, this again is where the private sector has to step up, philanthropy has to step up. We have to have our partners in community and individual donors have to step up to be able to help fill this gap that we have. Because, we want to make sure at the end of the day that when a neighbor is in need, that they have access to food. And that's our goal. So whatever we need to do to fill the gap, we have to work on that and figure that out. At the same time, how do we build in more better efficiencies and better alignment in terms with our partners so that we can even become even more efficient in what we do, from getting the food to the partners, um, getting the food to our neighbor, ultimately getting the food to our neighbors, making sure that we eliminate any process delays in that happening. And for me, those are things that we can do to tweak what we're doing to improve the neighbor experience, but also maximize inventory and things that we have.
Louisville has a lot to be proud of in terms of its leadership and the citizens who have stepped up to try and fill that gap. We still have a long ways to go. We've talked a lot about the challenges. Having GE out was amazing. Our volunteers are amazing. I do a lot of yoga, and the studio that I was in over the weekend, the teacher before class got started, he said something that really stuck with me, and he was like, in tumultuous times, you can feel very helpless in the face of all of the challenges that you have and the need in the community and the things that are happening around you. But if we can tune that noise out and be focused on community and being what we want to see in the world, that's how you cope. with everything that's going on. And I just want to bring that to the table and get your thoughts on that, Vincent, because I know that we've talked a lot about the challenges. I don't want people to feel overwhelmed, and I want everybody to feel proud of what the community has done so far, because it's been a lot. It's more than we can even list in this podcast. It's more than we can even talk about how much support has come on this issue. But when you think about where your hope lies and how you feel hopeful about the future, what do you think about?
I think about the future, I'm very hopeful because of goodwill, good-minded people who, refuse to let someone go hungry, refuse to let someone go without. And that's our community. That's what gives me hope. The federal government will do what the federal government does. It changes every administration. This is really a change for this particular administration, and so we will deal with it and work with it. But ultimately, what gives me hope is the community stepping up. Dare to Care started some 50 plus years ago as a result of a young man, Bobby Ellis, who unfortunately died Thanksgiving Eve, and it was the
Mm-hmm.
community that came together. Uh, that said we can't have this happen in our community ever again and started the first pantry that turned into a food bank that now we have over 400 pantries across 13 counties and we're delivering 22 million meals providing that to the community. And that's because the community stood up. It wasn't government, it wasn't, the private sector, it was individuals in the community said this won't happen again. And so we still have those same individuals in our community. And that's what gives me hope every day, realizing and knowing that we have that kind of support.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. That's great. And it's such a great thing to reflect back on. Um, Tony, you got any other questions?
I think, and again, Vincent, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a busy season for you guys at Dare to Care. I think, for our kind of last kind of two-part question, again, hey, how can the community support you guys at Dare to Care? But I'd love to hear how, we have been focusing on our neighbors in need, and that is the focal point of the situation. But I'd love to hear how you as a leader have navigated that at Dare to Care, specifically for your staff and as well as your partners in the community who are, working at the food pantries. Typically, they're like ours, volunteers, but how you've kept up the morale, not only for your staff, but those that you partner with in the community.
For me, it's just how I live my life. I'm an eternal optimist. I will take the most negative situation and look for the positive to make something good out of it. I'm of the mindset that if you have a lemon, don't try just the lemon, squeeze the lemon and make lemonade and make something out of what you have. And so when life throws you lemons, squeeze life and make lemonade, and so you could do something in terms of what you have, the resources you have, whether they're great or small, make the best use of that. And then recognize that you're not in it by yourself, that you have a host of people if they were aware of what the need was, if you had communicated something, that they would be ready and willing to step up. And so I know that I'm not in this fight by myself. And so I encourage folks that I see every day, know that you're not in it by yourself. There's a whole host of people in our community that want to love on you and support you. We're just here first, but there's going to be more to come. And, really energizing the base of people who are really doing the work and touching the lives of the people, continuing to keep them up. But the most important thing, aside from them serving, is that I encourage them to take care of themselves, because it's that old idea, uh, I believe to be true, is that if you're flying on a plane and you're sitting next to a child and the oxygen mask falls, the stewardess tells you to put the oxygen mask on first and then put it on the child. And the reason you do that is that you don't want to pass out before you can get it on the child and yourself. Now both of you are out.
Yep.
So you as a service provider have to take care of yourself because we don't want you passing out or harm coming to you as you're serving others. And so I constantly remind my staff, remind myself, you know, take that needed time for self-care.
Yeah, and don't feel
Yeah.
bad about it. Yeah, tapping into that
Right.
optimism and gratitude and community. Yeah, I do think those are the things that help keep people up when times are tough. And we just got to keep doing it. I'm so happy that you're here and that you're in the community. I'm so proud of all the work that Dare to Care does in partnership with St. Vincent de Paul. And there's a lot to be grateful there, and there's a lot to feel hope about there. So in spite of all these challenges, we're going to persevere, and we're going to keep doing what we can to help people.
Absolutely. And Tony and Jennifer, thank you for your partnership and just the work that you do. I mean, again, Dare to Care could not be who we are if it was not for partners like yourselves that are impacting people's lives every day. And you do it effortlessly, but there's a whole lot of effort that goes behind it.